Right, with the approach of autumn and winter in the UK, I'd just like to show you this evening a method that I use to actually keep my lathe chucks rust free through these seasons. And many of you know that I work in a very small metal shed, and it's very prone to condensation. I have insulated it throughout, but even on summer days, a couple of times overnight I came out and there was actually rust, or a very thin layer of rust, on my lathe chucks. And it doesn't help at all that I live on a river plain, and often the air is very humid or damp down here. The workshop has been improved considerably since I did the insulation, and I put very thick construction plywood on the outside of the metal roof with real good quality roofing felt, and that's helped a lot. I don't get any drips on the inside of the roof anymore like I used to in the winter. But there's always this tendency for the lathe chucks and lathe beds to actually get rust, particularly in these months. And this method is particularly good if you're going to leave the chucks for a long period of time without using them, if you went on holiday or if you just had time off from the workshop. My brother thought of this because he hasn't been using his machines for a while, and it worked brilliantly for him. So this year this is what I'm doing for mine. But just before I show you this, I'd just like to show you my new information plate that I've made up. These are really good things to make up. This is all the commonly used taps that I use, and the actual core diameter drills for those taps. I've done it in metric and imperial, so I can actually just get those sizes straight out. This information's obviously taken from the Zeus book. It's best to get one of these. But like I say, these are the ones that I mainly use in the workshop, and all it is a piece of thin aluminium. It's about 2mm thick, and it's bent over around the edges. I think it was like that when I found it. I just drilled a couple of holes and put a couple of rare earth magnets on there, so I can actually just stick it on the shelf above my lathe, and then that's a real quick reference and speeds everything up. So what I do for this rust preventative measure is first clean the chuck up. This is a Myford chuck, so it has an internal thread here, goes on the spindle. I start with that thread, and I use a Dremel tool on a flexi drive, or the Hilda one, and in the chuck there I use these brass brushes. If it was rusty at all or particularly dirty, I may give it a quick go over with a stainless steel one. I don't actually buy the genuine Dremel ones because I think they're way too expensive, and I get a load of these ones from China. You can get like 25 of them for the cost of probably one Dremel one, and I actually find these last exactly the same and are probably exactly the same. And I clean the thread first because if you leave a chuck for a period of time, even with a spray of oil in there, that oil goes sticky, and then it can be harder to actually get any dirt out of it. So what I do is just run the Dremel up and down that thread. And then I give it a good clean on the airline. I then just get ordinary ladies nail polish remover, and you can get a nice big bottle like this from the pound shop for £1. Use an old towel or whatever, and then just put some of that on there, and then I just clean the inside of that thread as well, and then I use another clean part of the towel, and then I hold it in the least contact place I can, like on the end of the chuck jaws there, like that, and then I give it a wipe over to completely remove any salts or whatever from actually touching the chuck. And although the nail polish remover has some additives in it, I don't find that causes any problems. When it's nice and clean like that, I give it a spray of just ordinary maintenance spray, which is a light oil, very much like WD-40. And first of all, spraying the thread around the back and all over like that. You can get obviously special sprays and things to prevent rust, but I find them again very expensive. And then I use ordinary cling film, again from the pound shop, so you can get a whole pound, 50 metres for £1, which is excellent value. And really it's best to wear surgical gloves or those soft cotton gloves, so you don't put any contamination on the chuck when you put it in the cling film. I put the cling film underneath first like this, and then just tear that one off. And the reason I do it this way round is that when you bring the cling film up, you can actually tap it down in between the jaws and get out as much air as you can. Bring it up like that again. And just fold that around like that to cover the chuck completely. And then I do the same again with another wrap. You don't have to do a second one, but if you're going to leave a chuck for a long period of time, it pays to. I turn it up the other way then, and then do the same on the back end. And I've found, and my brother's found, that you don't get any rust at all on that chuck, even in the severest of winters. And again, this is a very low cost maintenance spray, thin oil, so doing it like this is very economical. And I'll just show you what I mean by the rust. This is my Chinese mini lathe, and I haven't used it for a couple of days. When I look this evening, you can see there on the back end pulley that there's rust forming already. So it only really takes just a few minutes even to actually cover the chucks on the lathe. You can even put it over the ways of the lathe or any other large surface. Quick spray of oil, cover up with cling film, and you find that you won't get any rust on there at all. So to recap, if you use this method, first of all make sure the chuck is really nice and clean, then make sure it's totally dry, completely sprayed over with oil, and then put the cling film on and get out as much air as possible. And it is actually best to use this method on the least used chucks and faceplates and fixtures first, at the beginning of winter, or at any time really, and then you have more time to actually concentrate on keeping the lathe rust free, and it makes it all so much easier to do so.